Welcome back to Us Mint Mysteries. Have you ever wondered if that old, worn-out penny sitting in your drawer could actually be worth a small fortune? Well, hold on tight because today, we're diving deep into the mysterious world of bad condition Lincoln wheat pennies, and trust me, what you're about to hear will leave you speechless. Some of these beat-up little copper coins, the kind most people would throw away, have sold for jaw-dropping prices, even crossing the $500,000 mark. So grab your magnifying glass, sit back, and let's see if you might have one of these ultra-rare 1974 1-cent treasures hiding in plain sight. Now, start with the coin that looks completely ordinary, maybe even worthless at first glance. The 1940 Lincoln wheat penny. You might have one right now sitting in a dusty jar, its surface dull, edges faded, and those wheat stalks on the back barely visible. Most people wouldn't give it a second look. But here's the twist: even in this kind of fully worn condition, a 1940 wheat penny can hide a shocking story that might just make your heart skip a beat. This humble penny was minted during a turning point in American history. The Great Depression had just ended, and the world was on the edge of war. Millions of Americans carried this coin through some of the hardest times. Pocket change that literally helped families survive. Each of these pennies holds not just copper, but history itself. But here's where it gets really interesting. While over 586 million of these were made in 1940, a few of them came out with minting errors so rare, collectors are willing to pay small fortunes for them today. Imagine a tiny mistake made 85 years ago could now be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. One of the most shocking examples, a 1940 wheat penny struck on a silver planchet. Yes, you heard that right, a penny accidentally made on a dime blank. One of these error coins sold for over $450,000 at auction. That's nearly $500,000 for a coin that most people would overlook as junk. Even without errors, condition still plays a huge role. A fully worn, circulated 1940 wheat penny might only fetch around $1 to $5 if sold casually. But if yours shows signs of a rare double die obverse, where Lincoln's profile or lettering appears slightly doubled, the story changes fast. These errors are incredibly subtle. Look closely at the words Liberty or the date 1940. If you spot doubling, you could be holding something worth $25,000 to $50,000, even in heavily worn condition. Now, if you find one in uncirculated condition, bright and shiny with its original red copper glow, buckle up. Collectors can go wild for a coin like that. In high mint state grades, a perfect 1940 wheat penny can bring in $75,000 to over $125,000 depending on its strike and color tone, especially if it's one of those rare early dies with crisp details and rich luster. Think about that for a second. A coin that once bought a stick of gum or a newspaper could now pay off someone's mortgage. It's mind-blowing, and that's why so many coin collectors never toss away an old penny, no matter how bad it looks. The rougher it seems, the more you should inspect it, because sometimes those rough edges hide minting secrets the U.S. Mint never intended to release. And remember, these old Lincoln wheat pennies were made of 95% copper, which gives them a distinct reddish-brown tone. Over time, exposure to air, moisture, and even the oils from our hands darkens them, like some appear almost black. But that deep color, it doesn't ruin the value. In fact, for certain collectors, it adds character. So before you throw away that jar of worthless pennies, take another look. You could be staring at a tiny piece of American history that's secretly worth a fortune. Next up, let's talk about a coin that almost everyone has seen, but almost no one pays attention to: the 1946 Lincoln wheat penny. This time, in what most people would call trash condition. It's dirty, dark brown, maybe even a little green from corrosion, and absolutely covered in years of grime. You might pull one of these out of a jar and think it's not worth a single cent more than face value. But this is where coin history takes a shocking turn. Now, picture this. The year is 1946. World War II has just ended, and the U.S. Mint is finally returning to normal coin production after years of using steel and zinc-coated cents during the war. The country is celebrating peace, rebuilding homes, and minting millions of new pennies from recycled wartime ammunition. Yes, your dirty 1946 penny could literally be made from melted down military shell casings. Think about that. A piece of copper, once used in war, now quietly sitting in your coin jar. Most of these coins have aged to a dull, dark brown over time. They've been in pockets, dirt, drawers, maybe even buried in the ground. But that brown tone, that dirt and discoloration, doesn't always mean the coin is worthless. In fact, it's often the first clue that a coin has survived the full journey from mid-century America, untouched and unclean. And that can make it more desirable to collectors than a shiny, polished one. But here's where it gets absolutely wild among the 1946 wheat pennies. There are a few freak errors that have made collectors gasp. One of the most famous is the 1946 penny struck on a steel planchet, left over from the wartime 1943 issues. Those rare mistakes were never supposed to exist. Yet, a few slipped through the presses, and one of those has fetched nearly $420,000 at auction. Yes, that's almost $500,000 for what looks like an old, dull, dirty coin. In some normal-looking 1946 pennies hide secrets that can skyrocket their value. For example, a 19460 penny with a repunched mint mark or a subtle double die obverse can be worth thousands even in low-grade, worn-out condition. You don't need shine for value. You just need the right flaw. A fully circulated example with visible doubling has sold for $12,000 to $30,000, and uncirculated pieces have reached past $90,000 in rare cases. And let's not forget color. Collectors use three major color designations for copper coins: red, red-brown, and brown. The brown ones, like this, often seem the least impressive, but not always. Some have rich toning or a deep chocolate finish that gives them a one-of-a-kind appearance. When those traits combine with the rare strike or error, even a brown, dirty 1946 penny can spark bidding wars among serious collectors. The key is always in the details. Look closely at the rim, the date, the letters "In God We Trust." Sometimes, grime can hide tiny minting quirks that only show up under a magnifying glass. That's the magic of coin hunting, that hidden potential just waiting to be discovered. And while a typical 1946 dirty penny might sell for just a few cents, a verified error coin, even in this rough condition, could change hands for $10,000 to $50,000 depending on rarity and authenticity. That's the kind of story that keeps treasure hunters searching, because that next handful of junk pennies might just hold one worth more than a brand new car. So before you clean it, toss it, or spend it, don't. That worn, dark, dirty penny may be a symbol of an era when America was healing, rebuilding, and moving forward. It's more than metal, it's memory. Next, we return to the 1944's Lincoln wheat penny, but this time, we're looking at the kind most people would never give a second glance. It's dark, dirty, and dull brown, maybe even coated in a layer of decades-old dust. You pick it up and think, this thing's worthless. But what if I told you this exact kind of coin, this grimy little cent, could be worth more than your car, or even your house? You see, 1944 was a year of transition and triumph. America was nearing the end of World War II. And the U.S. Mint was running non-stop, pressing millions of pennies using copper reclaimed from military shell casings. That's right, your 1944 penny may have been made from the very metal that once served on the battlefield. But at the San Francisco Mint, where the S Mint mark was stamped, something extraordinary happened. Amid all that war-era chaos, a few leftover steel planchets from 1943 slipped back into production. And when those steel blanks met the 1944 dies, the result was a once-in-a-lifetime minting error, a 1944's steel cent. These coins look silver gray instead of copper brown, and if you're lucky enough to spot one, no matter how dirty, no matter how worn, you're looking at a treasure that could fetch $400,000 to $500,000 at auction. That's $500,000 for a coin that might be sitting unnoticed in a tin can or an old box right now. For your typical 1944's penny in dirty brown condition, You might assume it's worthless, maybe worth a cent or two. But even in this state, collectors love them. Why? Because the mint mark from San Francisco always adds scarcity. Fewer were made compared to the Philadelphia and Denver issues. A dark brown, uncleaned penny from San Francisco tells a story. It's authentic, it's untouched, and it's survived through nearly 80 years of American history. And that color, that deep, earthy brown, is what numismatists call chocolate toning. Believe it or not, some collectors prefer this look. It shows age, originality, and honesty. Polishing or cleaning a coin can actually destroy its value. But a natural, aged patina, that's gold, or in this case, copper. Even in low condition, a coin like this can bring $5 to $25 from a collector who values its story and authenticity. But if you happen to notice something strange about your 1944s, like an off-center strike, a double date, or a repunched mint mark, your heart should start racing. Those little minting errors can take a dirty, worn penny and suddenly make it worth $10,000 to $45,000. 11944's double die obverse, faintly visible under magnification, sold for over $35,000, even with scratches and discoloration. That's the beauty of coin collecting. The flaws make it priceless. And here's the wildest part. Some 1944's pennies have been discovered with foreign planchet errors struck on blanks meant for other countries' coins. Those ultra-rare mistakes have sold for unimaginable prices, up to $200,000 or more depending on weight, color, and magnetic reaction. So, if you have a dirty brown penny from 1944 with that tiny S under the date, take a second look. Don't clean it. Don't toss it. Hold it up to a magnet. If it sticks, you might have one of the holy grails of coin collecting. Even if it doesn't, you still own a relic of one of the most important years in American history, a survivor from the last days of war, pressed from metal that once fought for freedom. Now, let's turn our attention to another forgotten treasure, the 1941's Lincoln wheat penny. It's old, rough, and badly worn. Maybe the wheat stalks on the back are barely visible, and Lincoln's face is just a faint outline. You might even have one like this, a penny that looks like it's been through a war. But here's the shocker, even this battered little coin could hold a secret that might leave you speechless. Picture the world in 1941. America stood on the edge of World War II. The San Francisco Mint was striking coins like never before, preparing for an economy that was about to change forever. That tiny S under the date meant it came from the West Coast, from a mint known for smaller runs, slightly different dies, and sometimes some of the most valuable minting mistakes in history. Now, a 1941's wheat penny in bad condition might look worthless. You might think it's just another copper cent, dirty, scratched, and faded. But behind that rough exterior could be one of the rarest minting errors ever produced. There are documented cases of 1941's pennies struck on foreign planchets, blanks meant for coins of other countries, giving them the wrong color, wrong weight, or even a strange ring when dropped. One of these unusual errors sold for nearly $300,000, despite heavy wear and corrosion. Imagine that, a penny so damaged that you can barely read the date, yet collectors were fighting to own it. But the story doesn't end there. There's also the 1941's double die obverse, a variety where the lettering and Lincoln's profile appear slightly double. Most of these went unnoticed for decades, and many exist only in worn condition. Yet even a heavily circulated example with visible doubling can command $15,000 to $40,000, while a crisp and circulated one can skyrocket past $100,000. And if you're lucky enough to find one with a perfectly preserved S mint mark and that bold doubling, you're looking at one of the crown jewels of the wheat penny series. Now, let's talk about this bad condition, the roughness, the dirt, the dull brown tone. They all tell a story. This coin survived through wartime America. It passed through hands buying rationed goods, war bonds, and perhaps even a soldier's last meal before shipping off. When you hold one, you're not just holding a penny, you're holding living history. Even a beat-up 1941S penny can still bring $2 to $5 from collectors who value its age and mint mark. But again, it's not the condition that defines its true worth, it's what lies beneath the surface. If your coin feels slightly lighter or thinner, if the rim looks odd, or if the strike seems off-center, that's your cue to take a closer look. Those tiny irregularities can mean the difference between 1 cent and a life-changing discovery. And here's another hidden secret. Some 1941S wheat pennies were struck from slightly impure copper alloys, leading to coins that appear darker, sometimes nearly black. This unique toning, combined with an S mint mark, makes them highly collectible among specialists who chase vintage San Francisco issues. A pristine 1941S graded Ms. 67 red once sold for over $85,000, and that was without any visible errors. Just perfect color, perfect strike, and perfect history. That's how much collectors are willing to pay for a moment frozen in time, a simple coin that represents an America on the brink of global change. And now, we move into the 1950s, an era of jukeboxes, classic cars, and new beginnings for America. The next coin on our list might seem like just another old penny you'd find stuck to the bottom of a drawer, but trust me, the 1952 Lincoln wheat penny can hold a surprise worth far more than you'd ever imagine. At first glance, this one looks like nothing special. The details are faded, Lincoln's face is smooth, the edges are worn flat, and that deep brown tone tells you it's seen decades of circulation. You might think, this old thing isn't worth a dime, but what if I told you that this exact year 1952 produced some of the most mysterious and valuable minting varieties in the entire wheat penny series? Let's step back for a moment. In 1952, the U.S. Mint struck pennies at 3 locations: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. But here's the twist: that year, die preparation wasn't perfect. Several minor minting flaws slipped through, unnoticed at the time, and decades later, those same tiny errors turned into jackpot finds for collectors, the most famous among them, the 1952D double die obverse. To the naked eye, it might look normal, but under magnification, you'll see doubling in Lincoln's profile, in the word liberty, or across the date. Even in rough, no fine condition, the kind of coin most people would ignore, a real double die error can fetch anywhere from $25,000 to $65,000. And that's not even the rarest one. There's a known 1952 wheat penny struck on a silver dime planchet, a mistake so strange that experts still argue how it even happened. Those rare pieces, silvery in color and slightly smaller in size, have sold for over $350,000 at major auctions. That's right, a coin the size of a penny, but made of silver instead of copper, struck by accident, now worth more than most luxury cars. Now, let's talk about your average 1952 penny. Dirty, dark, no luster, no shine. Even then, there's history in that wear. By the early 50s, the U.S. Mint was still using 95% pure copper, the same metal that had been in use since Lincoln first appeared on the cent in 1909. Every nick, every scratch tells part of America's post-war story, and while a typical 1952 penny in no fine condition might bring only 2 to 5 cents, that's not where the real treasure lies. It's in the details: a slightly off-center strike, a repunched mint mark, or a die crack running across the coin's surface can skyrocket its value instantly. One 1952S penny with a strong repunched mint mark sold for $15,000, despite being heavily circulated and badly discolored. And here's something most people don't realize: color matters. The older the copper, the deeper the tone. Some of these coins age into a rich, dark chocolate brown, or even blackish hue. If your 1952 penny looks like that, don't clean it. Cleaning removes original surface details, the very thing collectors value most. Leave it as is, because even in poor shape, a natural patina can be worth more than you'd think. Now, here's a little test for the curious collectors out there. Grab a magnet. If your 1952 penny sticks to it, and yes, once in a while, it happens, you may have one of those rare off-metal errors. That would be a life-changing discovery, since no penny from that year was ever meant to be magnetic. One verified steel error from 1952, sold privately for nearly $250,000.so. Before you dismiss that dull, lifeless coin from 1952, take one more look. Because under that brown surface could be a story worth a fortune. A story that's been hiding in your change jar for 70 years, just waiting to be discovered. Now, hold on, because the next coin might just change the way you look at every single penny from the 1950s. The 1957D Lincoln Wheat Penny, even in full bad condition, scratched, worn, and nearly unrecognizable, has shocked collectors with its potential value. Most people would glance at this coin and toss it aside, thinking it's just another piece of pocket change. But those people would be very, very wrong. Picture this. A dusty old penny, its copper tone now faded into a deep, dark brown. Lincoln's face is smooth, the lettering almost ghostly, yet hidden in that tired little coin could be a minting mystery worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. In 1957, the Denver Mint struck over 1 billion wheat pennies. Yes, billion with a B. It was one of the highest mintages of the entire wheat series. So why on earth would a coin from such a common year be worth a fortune? The answer lies in the rare errors, the kind that slip through unnoticed, survive decades of circulation, and eventually resurface in someone's coin jar or old family collection. The most infamous of them all is the 1957D doubled die obverse. If you're lucky enough to spot one of these, you'll notice doubling around "In God We Trust," the word "Liberty," or even on Lincoln's profile. The effect can be faint, but under magnification, it's unmistakable. One of these rare errors, even in horrible, heavily circulated condition, once sold for over $45,000. But that's not where the story ends. Collectors have also discovered 1957D wheat pennies struck on foreign planchets, meaning the wrong metal blanks, leftovers from other countries' coins accidentally mixed in at the Denver Mint. Imagine finding a 1957D penny that's smaller, lighter, or oddly silvery in color. Those strange ones have sold for six figures. One-off metal 1957D struck on a dime planchet fetched a mind-blowing $210,000, and get this, it wasn't even in good shape. And let's not forget the repunched mint marks, or RPMs. Back in the 50s, mint marks were punched into the die by hand, which led to countless varieties of overlapping Ds. Some appear like a shadow or a ghost letter just above or below the main D. These are small details most people never notice, but coin experts do. Depending on how strong the repunching is, an RPM penny from 1957D can bring $1,000 to $12,000, even in bad condition. Now, think about this. The coin in your hand, dull, bent, maybe with a dark stain or a rim nick, could still be carrying one of these tiny, valuable secrets. That's the beauty of coin collecting sometimes. The ugliest coins hold the biggest surprises. Even in completely worn down shape, the 1957D wheat penny connects us to the past. Every coin minted that year was made of 95% copper, just before the US began modernizing its coinage. That copper once passed through jukeboxes, vending machines, gas stations. It witnessed an America that was booming and changing fast. And here's something fascinating. In 2018, a coin dealer discovered a 1957D transitional error, struck on a brass planchet rather than the standard bronze. The coin was so off color that most would have mistaken it for dirt or damage. When verified, it sold for $320,000 at auction. That single find turned a pocket change penny into a life-changing payday. So, if you have a 1957D wheat penny, even one that looks awful, don't let it go. Hold it up to a light, tilt it, look closely at the mint mark and the lettering. That dark brown, full bad condition coin might just hold the kind of minting mystery that turns disbelief into pure excitement. And finally, we come to our last coin of the day, the 1966 Lincoln 1 cent, a small copper piece that carries one of the most fascinating secrets in modern US mint history. At first glance, it looks ordinary, a coin from the 1960s, showing a slightly worn but still sharp image of Abraham Lincoln, his profile calm and proud. The familiar words, "In God We Trust," still shining faintly across the top. It's what many collectors would call fine condition, not mint, not new, but clearly a survivor of time. But here's the twist: the year 1966 hides a mystery that many collectors don't even know exists. You see, during this period, the US Mint was going through chaos. In 1965, coin shortages swept across America, and people began hoarding every bit of silver they could find. To stop the panic, the Mint made a bold decision. They removed mint marks entirely from coins struck between 1965 and 1967. That means your 1966 penny has no D, no S, no mark at all, just the raw stamp of history. Now, this decision created confusion, and within that confusion, some of the strangest minting errors ever recorded slipped through the cracks. The 1966 Lincoln penny might not look like much, but if yours has even the slightest anomaly, double strike, an off-center stamp, or a die clash where Lincoln's ghostly image appears faintly on both sides, you might be holding a coin worth tens of thousands of dollars. One of the most sought-after examples is the 1966 double die obverse, where the date or the word "Liberty" shows strong doubling. A coin like that, even in just fine condition, once sold for an incredible $45,000, and when found in higher grades, the price skyrockets over $150,000 at auction. But there's another twist. Some rare 1966 cents were struck on leftover copper planchets from 1965, or even on foreign metal blanks intended for other countries' coins that were being produced at U.S. mints that same year. Imagine a 1966 penny that's not quite the right size, color, or weight. That's not dirt, that could be a planchet error, and those are known to fetch prices of $250,000 or more when authenticated. Now, let's look at yours. A fine condition 1966 penny tells a story. It's got smooth wear over Lincoln's hair and cheek, some fading along the rim, and that warm brown copper glow that only time can create. It might look humble, but every detail counts. The spacing of the date, the shape of the letters, even the thickness of "In God We Trust" could reveal whether your penny was struck with one of the rare misaligned dies. And here's the part that still amazes experts. 1966 was a transition year. The Mint was experimenting with new metal compositions and techniques. A few experimental strikes made it out undetected. Some 1966 pennies show proof like mirror finishes, even though no official proof coins were released that year. Those mysterious few are some of the most desirable modern cents ever found, and they've sold for more than $400,000 to high-end collectors who crave their rarity and historical significance. So if you've got a 1966 Lincoln penny that looks a little too shiny, or maybe one that feels slightly lighter or heavier than usual, don't ignore it. That might be one of the Mint's secret survivors. It's incredible to think how a coin worth just 1 cent could carry a story of American history, mystery, and fortune all in one. From the worn wheat pennies of the 1940s to this iconic cent of the mid-1960s, each of these tiny copper treasures connects us to the past, and sometimes, to unimaginable wealth. And now, for our final surprise. A coin that doesn't just look strange, it feels mysterious the moment you see it. The 1974 Lincoln 1 cent, dark brown to almost black in color, fine in condition, but with an appearance that stops collectors in their tracks. That unusual tone isn't just age, it might be the mark of one of the most controversial experiments the US Mint ever conducted. At first glance, you'd think it's just an ordinary penny from the 70s, worn, dark, nothing special. But 1974 was no ordinary year for coinage. It was the year the Mint tried to change history. Copper prices were skyrocketing, and the government feared that pennies were costing more to make than they were worth. So, in secret, the Mint began experimenting with new metals, testing materials that could replace copper once and for all. That's where the story of the 1974 aluminum penny begins. Only about 1.5 million were ever struck as test pieces, and nearly all were destroyed before they could leave the Mint. Or so we thought. A handful slipped into circulation, and those that survived are now worth a fortune. So, what does that mean for your dark-shaded 1974 penny? Well, here's where things get thrilling. Some experimental pieces and early strikes used different alloys or contaminated planchets coins struck on metal blanks that weren't the standard copper-zinc blend. These odd coins often tone strangely over time, turning dark brown, gray, or even black. Most people dismiss them as damaged or dirty, but for a trained eye, that odd coloring could signal a hidden treasure. Even a genuine copper 1974 penny with off-metal impurities has sold for up to $35,000 when verified by experts. And the few known 1974 aluminum cents, if confirmed authentic, are valued between $250,000 and $2 million, depending on the condition and proof of origin. That's right, a 1-cent coin that could literally buy a house. But there's more. 1974 also produced rare double die and broadstrike errors, especially from the Philadelphia Mint. The doubling on Liberty or the date is subtle, but unmistakable under magnification. A heavily worn coin showing that kind of error can still bring $10,000 to $40,000, while high-grade examples reach well over 150. Let's talk about that black shade. Many collectors think dark pennies are ruined, maybe burned, corroded, or left in moisture for too long. But certain 1974 planchets reacted differently to the environment. The black hue can actually form a natural patina that, in rare cases, protects the coin. And if that coin happens to have a minting error, even in fine or circulated condition, that natural toning only adds character and value. One such 1974 black shaded penny with a clear die cap strike error were part of. Lincoln's head was struck into a second coin, sold at auction for nearly $120,000. Collectors went wild, not just for the error, but because the dark tone gave it an eerie, one-of-a-kind appearance. So, before you overlook that old, dark penny in your hand, take a closer look. Tilt it under light. Does it feel lighter than normal? Is the rim a little thicker, the color slightly silvery beneath the darkness? Those are clues, and if yours happens to be struck on a leftover aluminum or experimental alloy planchet, you're holding one of the rarest coins ever made in modern American history.